This will be the third of 4 videos on the Stalker series. This video will contain spoilers for Stalker Shadow Chernobyl, Clear Sky, and Call of Pripyat. Call of Pripyat might be the best game that GSC has ever made. While this isn't a hot take, it is highly debated among Stalker fans which game is the best. Some stick with Shadow Chernobyl, for not only being the first game, but also being the one with the most pure Stalker experience. While it might lack features that its successors have, it's still loved for creating a unique world. It did a great job of blending its influences with horror and action gameplay. Clear Sky is the odd one out, but to say it's without its fans would be incorrect. While I don't personally enjoy the nail-biting firefights, others loved it. They loved how brutal the game was, how unfair it could be. This leads us to Call of Pripyat. Why do people love this game? Why do I love this game? Well, it's time to find out. Call of Pripyat was published a year after Clear Sky, which itself was published a year after Shadow Chernobyl. To say that these games had a short development cycle might be a bit of an understatement. However, unlike Clear Sky, this time they weren't reusing the same maps. That's right, Call of Pripyat offered all new locations. This time the game is mainly divided into 3 separate loading areas, instead of many small ones. This leads to the game feeling more open world and a lot less linear. It's not as open world or large as a Bethesda game might be, or any other AAA game, but it's still fairly open. The first area is Zatan. It used to be a shipping yard until the riverbank dried up. Now it's just a swamp and a bunch of abandoned Soviet buildings. The second area is Yanov. It's an old train yard. There's also more to be found here, like the now famous industrial Jupiter plant. The last and final area is Pripyat itself. Pripyat and Shadow Chernobyl look nothing like the real place. Aside from the culture center and the Ferris wheel, it was almost all made up buildings. With a name like Call of Pripyat, it would be a terrible disappointment if Pripyat itself was underwhelming. Thankfully, the city is shockingly accurate to its real-life counterpart. Some creative liberties have been taken, and it's scaled down a bit for a video game of course, but it still looks correct. In fact, when you pull up a game map next to a real-life map, you could see how well they pulled this off. Many real-life locations can be found with stunning levels of detail. Here are just a few that I've found. I've also added additional information on these locations in the description. It's a real rabbit hole you could go down to if you're in that type of thing. I found it could be a real virtual tour at times, with the added threat of monsters, that is. While this isn't a point against the game, I do have one small gripe. There are many areas of the city that are completely fenced off, making it impossible to get to. Obviously this is because they had time restraints. It's just so disappointing when you forget about this, and when you make it to Pripyat, you're so excited to see the Ferris wheel, only to not be able to get to it.
Oh, we were right there, man!
The now famous Azora swimming pool is also not available to see. Maybe with some more time these locations could have been added. I know it feels a little bit entitled for me to ask for more. With Stalker 2 coming out eventually, it will be nice to see if they added the entire city this time. A man can dream, right? The game has all new anomalies for the player to explore. The old ones you know and love are back, too. These new ones are very eye-catching, making the player want to go see them, like a moth to the flame. Returning from Clear Sky are these devices that are used to find artifacts inside anomalies. A new detector was also added. In Clear Sky you had different tiers of detectors. The first one is so crappy I never even touched it. The second one is useful, but will only tell you the general direction an artifact is in. The next type had an LCD screen that pinged where it was like a radar. New to the game is one that not only tells you where the artifacts are, like the LCD one, but also tells you where hazards are located too. Sadly, this device makes using both pretty much useless, but its upsides are too great to be ignored. Artifacts are still very valuable, but much harder to find this time. Each anomaly will always drop at least one artifact, but the respawns are random and based on when emissions happen. Hunting artifacts in Clear Sky felt like a chore. I didn't touch it much past getting a couple I needed for my personal use. For some reason, I was addicted to finding them in Call of Pripyat. I got a dopamine rush from collecting these things. It also helps that more than a few missions ask the player to go out and find them. Call of Pripyat has other upgrades and changes too. A new addition are hotkey items, which are on the bottom left side of the screen. In both past games, the only items that you had on a hotkey were the bandages and the medkits. This time you can choose which 4 items you wish to be hotkeyed. You can also change the hotkeys to whatever works for you. I always bind mine to my mouse that has more buttons than a mouse ever needs. You can change these to whatever you like. If you don't wish to have bandages and medkits on your hotkeys, you don't need them. Speaking of bandages and terrible segues, let's go into our next topic. Bleed, the bane of my existence in Clear Sky, was nerfed. It feels closer to how it felt in Shadow Chernobyl. Bandages are also found all over the place again, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, but bleed feels like it's too easy to manage.
Are you insane?
And yeah, I know, I bitched about it last time for way longer than I should have. But let me explain my case. I think I figured out the problem. These games don't know how to balance bleed. They either make it a non-issue, where you have all the bandages in the world and no bleeds to spend them on, such as the case in Shadow Chernobyl and Call of Pripyat. Or they go the way of Clear Sky, where scraping your knee will cause you to bleed to death, because you only had 2 bandages instead of 5. This is another issue I really hope they could fix in Stalker 2 and make it more balanced and fair. In my Shadow Chernobyl video, I mentioned that I hate that games of this era only let you carry 2 guns. While that still is the case in Call of Pripyat, I'm happy that I don't need to use the pistol anymore. I can now replace it with any weapon I like. I went with a shotgun plus rifle combination. I'd have loved to have a pistol alongside with these 2, but I think this is a step in the right direction. Coming back from Clear Sky is the upgrading system. For reasons I don't fully understand, the what if I need it later? What if I find something better? Mind virus never affected me in Call of Pripyat. Early in the game I picked up a shotgun that carried me almost the entire time. I only finally replaced it when I got a better, unique version of the same shotgun. I had 2 reasons I enjoyed upgrading more in this game than I did in Clear Sky. One was having more money than I can ever hope to spend, and the other was how they overhauled the system. New for upgrading is the need to search for tools for the gunsmiths so they can install upgrades on the guns. Something I omitted from my Clear Sky video was the very odd way upgrading worked. To get a fully upgraded weapon or armor, you had to find a flash drive first that had blueprints for it. The annoying part was finding a flash drive for the upgrade you actually wanted, instead of getting one for something you didn't care about. The reason I didn't mention this in my Clear Sky video is, well, I forgot. Sorry. Sadly, upgrading isn't the only use you'll get out of the gunsmiths. Call of Pripyat brought another change with it. A change that I almost always hate. Weapon durability. With very rare exceptions, I hate everything about weapon durability in video games. I've never understood the reason why devs insist on adding weapon durability. If you trust your life to a weapon that will break after firing it a couple of times, then it's not a weapon you should be trusting. And if it's a oh fuck panic moment, then it's failed to do that, because I don't panic when my weapon breaks in a game, I just feel annoyed. I don't want to go on a tangent on this for too long, and I could probably make a whole dedicated video about how much I hate weapon durability, so let me make it more brief. In past Stalker games, durability did exist, but truth be told, it was almost a non-issue. I honestly forgot it existed until I was starting to work on this video. The most durability affected in those games was how much you could sell a gun for. It was very rare that you were ever going to use a gun that was almost broken. In Call of Pripyat, the guns and armor break all the time, and they degrade at a far quicker rate than they used to. You'll likely spend more money fixing your gear than anything else in the game. It just feels artificial, a time waster. I never have and ever will find this mechanic engaging.
Attention stalkers, an emission will start any minute now. Find cover if you want to live.
Blowouts, or missions, are also back. They work the same way they worked in Clear Sky. A notable change though is NPCs are now affected by it too. They'll also run and find shelter and die if they don't. It's not rare, and in fact quite often, that you'll find stalkers that didn't make it in time and have turned into zombies from the blast. This still remains probably one of the best features and most unique things about Stalker. The bone-shattering firefights at Clear Sky are gone, but that isn't to say that these firefights are a walk in the park either. You can still be killed in 2 or 3 shots, and combat is still intense. Encounters with humans are mostly safe for missions this time. The faction war system from Clear has been removed entirely, and thank God. I know some people liked it, but I honestly just found it to be a waste of time. Oddly enough, most NPCs in this game aren't hostile to the player. While the firefights with the humans might be far less intense than they were in Clear Sky, something else makes up for this. The mutant fights. Monsters. Bloodsuckers are all over the place, and just as creepy as they ever were. Packs of rabid dogs will make quick work of you if you're not careful. And let's not forget everyone's favorite mutant, the Snorks. Call of Pripyat reminds us that humans aren't the real monsters. No, the real monsters are the monsters. I had more encounters and fights with monsters in Call of Pripyat than I had in both other games combined. It really does remind you how threatening the zone can be. Side missions in Call of Pripyat are the best they've ever been. These feel like proper side missions too. The type of thing you'd find in a Western RPG. I'll cover one of the ones I enjoyed the most. Probably my favorite one, actually. A stalker named Groose asks me to look into the disappearance of several stalkers. He suspects a bloodsucker lair is nearby and is picking them off. He also tells me that his buddy, a popular hunter named Danila, is missing after looking into the problem himself. After agreeing to help, Groose and I go and check out a nearby building to discover it really is bloodsuckers. A lot of them. Groose tells me to go warn the stalker camp about the bloodsucker problem while he continues to look for his friend Danila. Back at the camp, Beard, who somewhat runs the place, suggests gassing the tunnels with poison. He directs me to Owl, a shady weapons dealer in the zone who might know where I could get my hands on poison gas. He'll tell me, for a price. He points me to an abandoned military convoy, rumored to have what I'm looking for. It seems the camp medic Tremor has also gone missing. This problem is getting far worse if I don't solve it now. If I don't get that poison soon, this place is going to be overrun by bloodsuckers. The price for this information pays off. The container is here, but it must be unlocked with 2 keys. Thankfully, both keys are close by in abandoned jeeps. I also pick up some useful documents that I could sell. I hook up the gas tank to the ventilation system and pump poison into the lair. The bloodsuckers don't seem to like this very much, and come outside to ask me to stop. I very calmly and politely tell them that I won't stop. After a few words, they seem to see my point of view and leave. After making it back to report the success of the mission, I asked Beard what happened to Groose. Of all people, he'd like to know what happened. He tells me that Groose went to the old docks. When I go to the old docks, I find the body next to an old cabin. It's Danila. Oh God. Tremor?
I knew I'd be exposed eventually. I'm sure you have many questions.
He took advantage of the bloodsucker problem and used it to feed his sickness. He stooped as low as killing his own friends. The bastard's not even going to see justice because he takes his own life. Well, such is life in the zone. As dire as things turned out, you as the player made the area a better place. Well, by zone standards at least. Now more than ever, it feels like what you do impacts the zone. There's a belief among Stalker fans that the world of Stalker is uncaring if you live or die. You're a nobody just like everybody else. The thing is, you should never underestimate a nobody. I also reject the belief that these protagonists are not important. A protagonist wouldn't be a protagonist if they weren't important to their story or narrative. The world may never know about who they are or what actions they took, but unspoken heroes are far more real than you might think. S.T.A.L.K.E.R is very important as both the protagonist and antagonist of this series. S.T.A.L.K.E.R is the one who destroys the Sea Consciousness Project. He's the first to penetrate the zone, twice. He even does it a 3rd time when the player controls him. S.T.A.L.K.E.'s efforts to shut off the Brain Scorcher in the first game are the only reason anyone is even in Zayton or Yanov in this game. People say they only came here because the Brain Scorcher was turned off and they were finally able to get to the heart of the zone. And while I'm at it, let me give S.T.A.R his dues also. Without S.T.A.R trying to stop S.T.A.L.K.E at the end of Clear Sky, S.T.A.L.K.E wouldn't have a reason to turn off the Brain Scorcher in the first place. It's all connected. The right man in the right place can make all the difference. The plot of Call of Pripyat follows Major Alexander Degtyarev, a former stalker of the zone and now Ukrainian military. Degtyarev is posing undercover as a stalker. His mission is to investigate why Operation Fairway failed. Operation Fairway was a military plan to take control of both Pripyat and the Chernobyl power plant after the events of Shadow Chernobyl. To refresh your memory, at the end of Shadow Chernobyl, the military failed to take control of the plant after the mission wiped out everyone except the Monolith and S.T.A.L.K.E.R. This time they're back and ready, or so they thought. It's Degdyrev's mission to find out what happened to these gunships. There's very little information to be found on what caused these wrecks. However, Degdyrev does find 2 clues.
What else is there? A map with what look like possible evacuation locations. Positions B2, B28, and B205. Interesting. 2 bodies. Looks like they died in the crash. Everything of value has been looted and the onboard computer has been wiped clean. But the black box is still intact. Interesting. I reckon a decent technician will be able to extract the information on it and decode it.
Both lead to the same result, so we'll follow the map for now and get back to the black box in a little bit. With the evac spots mapped out, Degdyrev can meet up with the survivors and get some answers on what the hell is going on. One of the 3 locations is the major Stalker camp in the area. There is 0 chance that soldiers would go into a Stalker camp. The 2 don't like each other, so a shootout would occur. The second location is a long-abandoned anti-air missile site. No soldiers are to be found here. Degdyrev does find a note left by Lieutenant Sokolov though. Sokolov writes that he has waited 2 days and can wait no longer and needs to find shelter. Sokolov can be found at the nearby scientist's bunker. Like the good soldier he is, he won't answer any questions about the failed mission. Degdyrev can't blow his cover and reveal it to Sokolov that not only is he a fellow Ukrainian officer, but he's actually a superior officer. The last evac is in Pripyat. That black box I mentioned before also held a recording informing surviving military members to meet at the Pripyat evac. There's a problem though. No guide will take Degdyrev to Pripyat. The good news is that there is another way around this. An underground tunnel is in the Jupiter plant. It leads straight into the heart of Pripyat. The bad news is that this can't be done alone. The blast doors need a special technician to open, and it's unknown what's lurking down there. The Major's gonna need a team to make this plan work. After a night of drinking with an ex-member of duty, he agrees to join this fool's errand. He tells Degdyrev that he's gonna need a couple more men and some environmental suits to survive down there. The next man to join is named Vano. Vano's a man who the Major's already helped get out of some trouble with bandits by asking them very nicely to stop shaking him down for money. He's a bit gullible and timid, but a good man who won't stab you in the back. Next up is Lieutenant Sokolov. Like Degdyrev, he needs to reach Pripyat too. The scientists are willing to give him an environmental suit if Degdyrev helps them out with a favor. They want a special plant that's growing inside an anomaly not far from their bunker. A very simple request that will have 0 resistance for sure. There's no joke here actually. It's a very simple request and nothing bad happens. With that settled, they give Sokolov the suit and he's ready to go. There's a squad of ex-Monolith members hiding on the edge of Yanov. Talking with them will give some insight on what it's like to be in the Monolith, and it's some bone-chilling material. I'm just gonna ignore that part. The ex-Monolith needs shelter. Living out in the open in the zone is asking to die. There's a problem though. Degdyrev might know that these men are ex-Monolith and mean no harm, but no one else is gonna believe that. If they're seen walking to Yanov Station, they'll be killed on sight for sure. It's understandable why this would happen considering the reputation they have in past games. It would take a group like Duty or Freedom to recruit the squad and keep anybody from messing with them. Lucky for these guys, I became real buddy-buddy with Freedom after I informed them that they had a lying traitor amongst them. After that, I discovered some embarrassing information about the leader of Duty. It turns out he's not the martyr everybody thought he was. With the help of Freedom, or Duty, the ex-Monolith joined Freedom, or Duty, making them protected from being shot at. With his men safe in the hands of Freedom, or Duty, Strider agrees to join the team. Strider wants to go back to Pripyat and learn what happened to him and the other ex-members of Monolith, to either find answers or just find some closure. With the gang all here, all they need is a technician. Nitro, the gunsmith and mechanic at Yanov Station will do. They make their way through the tunnels and fight off snork attacks, Monolith, and zombies. Danger lurks behind every corner down here. After a long fight through the tunnels, they finally make it into Pripyat. That's where they're met with the remaining survivors of Operation Fairway. It's here and now where the Major finally gives up his cover.
I'm Major Degdyrev, USS. I'm here to investigate the failure of Operation Fairway.
Degtyarev meets with Colonel Kowalski, where they both compare notes on the situation. The colonel has a feeling the monolith might have attacked the gunships with some sort of weapon, a weapon that was also used on the military during the end of Shadow Chernobyl. He then asks Degtyarev to take place in an ambush to get a hold of one of these monolith weapons. The ambush seemed to go off without a hitch, but it was actually a trap for the monolith's counter-ambush. Everyone except the Major is killed. Their deaths are not in vain though, because he did get his hands on one of the weapons. Any Stalker fan would know that he's just found a Gauss rifle. You could find a handful of them in Shadow Chernobyl inside the power plant. You could only find one in the entire game of Clear Sky, and it's used to take down S.T.A.L.K.E.R. This was a custom-made version by Lebedev, and it was non-lethal. Unfortunately for Degtyarev, Lebedev is dead. The only known living person that can help the Major now is way back in Zayden. The resident mechanic there worked on one way back in the Jupiter plant when it was still in operation. Files can be found in the Jupiter plant referring to Item 62. Fun fact, in real life, the Jupiter plant was used up until 1996, 10 years after the disaster. In fact, a lot of locations in this area in real life were used by the Soviets and later Ukrainian government until the late 90s. This photo of the famous pool was actually taken in the 90s. Anyway, back to the game. Cardin says that he can make the rifle fire again if he has the schematics for it. He happens to still have the old keycard to the workshop where the rifle was designed. The workshop has a large-scale version of the rifle and other useful documents. These documents also name-drop someone important, Lebedev. Lebedev worked on the Gauss rifle. While getting these documents does help fix the rifle, it doesn't actually matter in the long run, because he learns there's no possible way a Gauss rifle could take out a high-end gunship. With no other leads, Degtyarev heads to Lab X8. Sadly, this is the only lab in the entire game, and it's a short one too. Lab X8 acted as an HQ for the group after the fall of the Soviet Union. The group were a group of scientists that would later create the Sea Consciousness Project, and therefore create the Zone. It's also learned that not all members joined them on this endeavor. Lebedev didn't join and left after the second disaster in 2006. This explains why he knew so much about the Zone. He knew about Gauss rifles and how to build them. He knew about the Brain Scorcher and its true meaning. He's seen the blueprints. He's seen the models. He knows the works. There are a lot of fan theories about Lebedev. He wasn't very forthcoming in Clear Sky about how much he knew about the Zone. Was he working undercover for Sea Consciousness? Was he brainwashed to protect the truth of the Zone at all costs? How much does Lebedev actually know about Sea Consciousness? He knew about the Noosphere. This isn't up for debate. Documents in X8 tell us that not only he knew, but other founding members of Clear Sky that worked with him also knew. The man worked at HQ for the entire operation. I refuse to buy that he didn't know anything about Sea Consciousness at all. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. But we have a game to finish, so let's move on. After returning from the lab, the Major's asked to check out a radio jammer that's preventing the Colonel from contacting HQ. After blowing that up and saving a soldier along the way, that's when he shows up.
My name is S.T.A.L.K.E.R.
You're the Stalker who disabled the Scorcher?
Yes.
S.T.A.L.K.E.R is here to help. He wants to tell the military, in fact, the entire Ukrainian government, everything he knows about the Zone.
The reasons are obvious. There are many anomalies in the air, especially in the center of the Zone.
We had a map with the safe air corridor between anomalies, and the helicopters had emission protection systems.
That's odd. You're telling me you haven't noticed that anomalies move around after an emission. Some disappear, and new ones show up in different places, which makes your map of anomalies effectively useless.
So that's what it is.
What?
That's right, the military had no idea that anomalies move after blowouts. I thought this was common knowledge in the Zone. This was a major part of Clear Sky's plot. A huge emission makes areas like Limanesk and the swamps more open to explore. I don't think this is a plot hole though. I think it's more that the government is so inept when it comes to the Zone, it never even occurred to them that this could possibly happen. All they care about is keeping stalkers out of the Zone and nothing else. Well, with the mystery of Operation Fairway wrapped up, all that's left to do now is escape. Once the emission passes, they can call HQ and inform them that their current maps are useless. HQ will now plot out a new map and come for the rescue. In the meantime, Degtyarev can talk to S.T.A.L.K.E.R about a few topics. There's a side quest where you collect all his old letters from Fang and Ghost, finally giving him some closure on his friends. Oddly, he never comments on his rifle that you can find and use. I normally use the VSS or G36 in my playthroughs as my go-to weapon, but for this video I decided to use S.T.A.L.K.E.'s gun, hoping he might comment on it. I would have loved a quick line, like my rifle, I'm happy to see that it's helping someone again, or I have a lot of memories attached to that gun, I hope you treat it well. It seems like a missed opportunity to me. The final mission is to make a push to the Prometheus movie theater. Everyone in Pripyat that's human or otherwise will be trying to stop Dagdrab, S.T.A.L.K.E.R and the rest from making it. I complained in my Clear Sky video that this game and Shadow Chernobyl underutilized their urban levels. They've more than made up for it this time around. Like in both games, this one too will have a large urban firefight that keeps you on edge, fighting off everything the zone throws at you. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and while it could benefit from more intense moments, this final fight at the helicopter more than makes up for it. Dagdrab and company make their daring escape. The game ends with a slideshow that reminds me of Fallout or Wasteland. You learn about the people you affected and whether or not they lived or died. You learn about if you helped the zone or made it a worse place. While I'd prefer a pre-rendered cutscene to this, I do understand why they went this route instead. It's not that big of a deal. I said Call of Pripyat might be the best game GSC has ever made, but now that we're at the end of this trilogy, can I really say it's the best one? Well, yes, it's an opinion, of course I can. Out of the trilogy, Call of Pripyat's the one I replay the most. It's my go-to when I'm in the mood to play a Stalker game. While it lacks the creepy laboratories of the first game, I find the locations more interesting. And that isn't to say that the areas of Shadow Chernobyl are bad. They're not. It's great. It's a great game. When they made that game, I don't think they were trying to be realistic or portray the area in a way that reality would portray it. But when it came to Call of Pripyat, it felt more like they wanted to do the area justice. They wanted to make it look like the real place as much as they could. The Anov trade yard is a real place. The Jupiter plant is a real place. They even went the extra mile and added random real-life buildings into the game, ones that probably don't even have a name, but you could recognize if you looked at photographs. I said in my Shadow Chernobyl video that my interest in the real-life Pripyat is what got me into these games in the first place. I just found something very interesting about it. It's a city trapped in time, forever stuck in the Cold War. Every time I'd look at pictures or videos of the place, it filled me with this deep sadness. Every apartment building you see used to be where a family lived. The people who lived in there had dreams, aspirations, jobs. They lived normal lives like you and I did. The definition for this feeling is called Sonder, but now I'm getting incredibly off topic at the end of this video. Sorry. I wish the best for GSC, and I wish the best for Stalker too. Whether or not it can live up to the hype of its predecessors has yet to be seen, but I'll be happy when I can walk the streets of the zone once again. Till next time, take care.